You're listening to Pharma Talks, navigating the content maze, the go-to podcast where experts from Viseven and seasoned gurus from the pharma industry dive deep into the world of content. Join us as we explore the latest in marketing, digitalization, AI, and much more.
Hello everyone. My name is Nataliya Andreychuk. I am CEO and co-founder of Viseven company. And welcome to our first episode of Pharma Talks. Today, we are not only talking, we're talking about how to navigate through the content maze. Joining me today, I have a very nice guest. I have the guests are not only my good friends, they are also the experts in the industry. And together with me today, we will be opening the very first episode of our podcast and opening the question what we mean about digital transformation and about content strategy, about the content itself. We will deep dive into what I have been passionate about for more than 15 years, about how we create content, how we make it a success, how we deliver it and make it efficient. So today with me, please meet them, Jean-Francois Delas and Prasant Vijayakumar. Jean-Francois, please introduce yourself.
Pleasure, and hi everybody. Very nice to be here with Nataliya and Prasant on this first episode together. So my name is Jean-Francois Delas, so JF in short. I joined Viseven at the start of the year as head of the global customer success team, helping clients to make the most of what Viseven can offer in terms of products and services. And I'm joining Viseven with a background of over 20 years in the pharma industry, having had the chance to work with different type of companies from large to smaller. So I appreciate the challenges and opportunities of both. I worked in global, regional, but also local settings. So again, understanding the specific needs of the different stakeholders. And my specialty expertise have been in digital transformation, and part of this content. And when we talk about content, I had the pleasure to be able to work on various wide spectrum of projects, from strategic such as content strategy, content editorial, all the way to be able to deploy content at scale, part of global factories. So pleasure to be here with all of you today.
Thank you, JF. That's impressive. Prasant, what about you?
Thanks, Nataliya. And it's a pleasure to be here. Hi, everyone. My name is Prasant Vijayakumar. I'm the head of Content Strategy and Enablement at Viseven. My background, I think I've been with the pharmaceutical industry for nearly 20 years. In between, there was a bit of a break, but that 20 years covered things like, I was trained as a pharmacist initially, then I did my marketing, I then became a pharmacist for a bit, and then I moved to quality assurance with a pharmaceutical company. Then I spent some time as a medical rep, and then I think after that I spent nearly 15 years in creative agency. Most of the global creative agencies specialize in pharmaceuticals. So working with different clients and their products, new products to launch product to establish products. So a lot of experience coming from them, and mostly dealing with creating content. Even before in the pharma industry, it was known as content. We were creating, content. It's a new labeling, I would say, when we say content in pharma. But yeah, it's the last few years I've spent in digital transformation, especially with a marketing technology company based out of London. So I was supporting a pharmaceutical company in the digital transformation, especially in content strategy, looking at things like how do we get into automation of the content process, MLR automation possibilities, and finally I was responsible for the content analytics and trying to see how we can bring data together to find some answers to some key questions that we may have about content and how we can utilize those insights to make content better.
Because for some of us, when we think about content, this is the specific channel, the specific type of communication, maybe even specific asset, but we never ask the question what really content means for our industry, for pharma and life sciences, how we are defining the content as a meaningful asset for our industry, why it means so much to have this efficient and quality content. JF, maybe you will help us.
Sure, no, it's right. And I guess why content is important, to me in a nutshell, that's because this is the basis of communication and engagement with our stakeholders, being obviously HCPs, but in some cases your patients or payers or insurances. And there's no wonder that whenever people talk about content, we always say your content is king. And so this is super important. And we also know that in nowadays, where digital is so much important, digital is very hungry for content. So we need much more of this versus what we had before, which is putting obviously a tremendous challenge on company to be able to produce it at scale. And we know that when we look at what is happening in the industry, we've got your big gap between leaders and laggard in terms of the sheer volume of what we can produce. But there's also one more consideration also for me, which is important, is that the end game is not about producing content for the sake of producing content, because you might also say that right now with more content, you are at risk of creating your noise. And so in this context, in fact, it's super important to understand quality is as important or even more important than volume. How can you ensure that you can really differentiate by proving the relevance to your customer, so that you can stand out really from the crowd?
Yeah, I think it's if you bring back to the point of defining what content is exactly, because a few years ago when I was in the creative agency, we never called it content it was a buzzword. I don't know when it crept into our lexicon of language within pharmaceutical industry that okay, there is content now, and that's a struggle, because this is where we find today that it's difficult to dissociate ourselves from form of the content versus the end means of how it is delivered to the HCPs. So a lot of times when we talk about content, it's possibly that in my mind it is that we are communicating information to the HCPs. In our industry, it's all about information. We are not delivering entertainment. We are not creating blockbuster films or television series, which is content for a lot of the when it comes to the consumer world. But in our industry, we are talking about information that is is trustworthy information. Because in the end, the doctor needs to believe you that the content they are receiving can be trusted, and therefore how you deliver and how it is engaged with, how it is consumed by the HCPs is something that it comes at the end of the stage. But initially, what exactly is that content? Where is that information coming from?
As the information in the form and with the purpose.
Yeah, and to some extent in pharma, I feel content is limited in that sense. If you are promoting a new product, you can only say X number of things because that is what is being proven in the clinical trials and clinical studies. You cannot go and say something beyond that proof point and say something completely different to what is being tested and presented in such a way through the data. So I guess we need to always think about where is the content origin? What do you, how do you define content in the industry?
Yeah, very, very true. And to that point, and I guess and to what you said, Prasant, even in what you say, you mentioned the purpose of content. We also need to see this, also now in a wide, with a wider definition, where yes, there will always be this promotional type of your messaging and content around your product, and for this we need to remain for sure relevant and close to science. But we also have now wider also means to communicate beyond the product around some of the services which we are providing. So the scope of content, from promotional, non-promotional, your service related, is quite wide. But now, in fact, also with the beauty of having digital, we got multiple permutations to be able to create your different content. So in terms of surely the content asset or the channels which we're going to use to send this content, being emails or being your e-details or being on the web or being your banners or being on social media, and obviously each channel will have its specific requirement in terms of the format and the type of content. And now we also know that the very way of thinking of content is not anymore this fixed asset, but these channel agnostic modules, which you can see almost like a piece of a jigsaw, and again giving you the ability to piece it together in a very personalized ways based on the needs and preferences of the HCPs. So the length of content is now is becoming just quite big, giving us lots of flexibility to engage with customers.
Exactly, and this is what we are meaning while we say we treat the content like a relevant information with a great purpose and the secure information, but it is rather unlocked. It is not locked into the format. It is not locked into the particular channels. So we are unlocking it. And here comes the question about the content strategy, because today more and more I'm coming across the following problem, which my friends and my customers, our customers in Viseven and customers to be in Viseven are communicating we need a lot of content. We need to accelerate our content production. I say always, no, let us understand what is your strategy. Let us assess the situation. They always receive the same answer. No, you don't understand. We will assess the situation, but later. Let us accelerate first. What do you think? Let me put this provocatively about acceleration over the strategy. So what do you think about that?
Well, because this is my role, I think I should take the opportunity to define what content strategy is. I guess this is where I'm sure a lot of, in the industry, there are people who are driving this anyways. But for us as an organization, we need to also understand that, okay, when it comes to content strategy, what we are trying to do is we are trying to, in the end, it's about delivering valuable content. You are communicating information through that content, which is valuable to the end user, in this case, the healthcare professional, so which is your target audience. And in order to, eventually what we are as a pharmaceutical company, we are it's delivering on the business objective. For us, it is that we are communicating the right information to the target audience in the right way, making sure they trust that information. And you need to do it, and the context is important, valuable, because you cannot just keep on generating content and sending it over. It will not land value. And then it comes to the basic format. So how do you define that value? Only by starting with the customer. What is it they think is most valuable? So we need to understand the customer. So it's all about keeping the customer at the center of things, understanding what their drivers are, what are their barriers. It's that typical spiel of, okay, you need to know the customer. You need to know what drives them. What are their key barriers when it comes to treating certain disease area and or treatment regimen for managing a disease in this case, and then trying to see, okay, for that particular driver or barrier, what would be the key message where if we communicate that will help them overcome a barrier, for example, or help them continue to prescribe your product. And then you look at your content. What do you have that can help you communicate that message? And then when it lands, that piece of content, when it lands through the right channel to the customer, the HCP in this case, they will find value in it. Now, it doesn't need to be promotional. It can be non-promotional. So I think that is where we need to look at overall the funnel of the HCP journey as well. Okay, where are they in their journey of discovering or treating a particular patient, in their treatment regimen, I would say, and then looking at what type of content will be most suitable at that point of treatment or awareness of the treatment journey.
The quality of content is paramount due to the effect it has on prescriptions, on treatments, on scenarios, on improving of the patient journey, on everything. However, very frequent what I am coming across is in the equation of omnichannel, the content quality is very rarely made like a big accent on that. So always we are talking about the channel mix, about reach and frequency, but then the quality of content, is it hardly measurable? So can we talk a little bit about this tagging, metadata, quality of content, and how it contributes into us gathering the right data then, which is so impactful on the improvements in our messaging and in the whole cycle of the communication.
Yeah, and just on this one, in fact, when you say quality, there's also something which is important to look and to define. So, in terms of also the customer experience, your aspect of content, and so we talked about a lot so far about relevance, purpose, which for sure is something which is super important to have an engagement. But next to relevance, there are also a few other ones to consider, like simplicity. How can you also make it easy for customers to consume the information? We know that increasingly HCPs are super busy. They are seeing so many patients in a day that they have hardly any time to be able to keep up. And at the same time, you got this overload of information which is coming to them. So the urge to in a format of content to be concise, to summarize, to give key takeaways upfront, and then only to give the ability to ICPs to deep dive for details if they wish to, is super important. So relevant, yes. Making it simple to consume the information, super important. And then the other one, obviously, is trust, credibility. So how can I trust you as a partner for this? So part of this is what Prasant was saying in terms of you're being true to science, and you're very obviously you're driven by your claims. But also, in fact, in terms of content, that means that it's not always the onus on pharma to provide your content. We also have third party who are also providing credible content, especially when it comes to your unbranded type of information, disease information, clinical information. And I believe it's also like a due from pharma to have this wide understanding of content in terms of not only the one which they will provide, but also consider third parties, trusted professional networks.
Yeah. It's a good point, Jeff. You mentioned about the quality of content. Some years ago, I think I'd seen a study of cardiologists, and we were looking at what type of content they were interested in. So one of the things was surprising, that clinical trials, they said they don't have time to look at the trials data. So if you provide them with a clinical trial study, the whole whatever publication, they don't have time. So they're looking for summarized, bite-sized pieces of information from that clinical trial. Because, all clinicians are quite time poor, so they want the right information, trusted information given to them, so that they get the main points and then they can use it in their daily practice. Similarly, they a lot of information they get from the journals they read, and they are interested in a lot of patient-related content as well. So we shouldn't forget about this, because patient support is a big thing. Patient support programs or patient service programs. And one of the other things is patient adherence. Even if a doctor is prescribing a certain treatment, often the patient ends up not taking the medication, not using the right, following the dosing pattern, and not getting the benefit out of it, which is a huge loss for a lot of countries where the government is funding the treatment, and in that case it's a huge loss, and patient adherence becomes such a big topic. So those kind of content related, not just when we talk about unbranded content, we should also be addressed by the pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah. No, very true. And if I can just just reflect on the two things you said. So you started to talk about the simplicity aspect and how can we provide concise information. Again, some of the professional networks are doing this really well in terms of really nailing down the format, so that you can it takes you just only not a long time to have a look and understand the key points, and then deep dive if you need. I also remember in my past working on things like guidelines. Guidelines are inherently so complex. You are talking about pages and pages and pages of data and recommendations, and there is no way you can go through it unless you have lots of time. So in this case, we had something which is brilliant, which is for the same guideline having various formats depending on the time available from the HCP. So look, HCPs, if you only have 1 minute, will give you an infographic with all the key things, takeaway that you need to consider. If you have 5 minutes, we'll give you a set of interactive slides, year 3, year 5, where we get into more details. And then if you have 20 minutes or more, then here's more. So that's also a brilliant way, I believe, that's to think about using the format based on the time available of the HCPs, and giving the choice and the option to the HCPs to select the one which best fit their schedule and work. So that's number one. And then two, on the one that on the patient adherence materials. So agree with you, and this is something which is also super needed by HCPs, because again, HCPs, we know, are spending so little time with your clients, so that if you can give them practical materials which they can give them to their patient, this is something which is obviously clear. Your clear needs. But again, in terms of the simplicity theme, when you do this, it needs to be really much integrated in their workflow and their prescription, your software, because if you made it more complex in terms of they having to log in to a website and you're inputting God knows how many your data, they would never do that. So thinking about their daily life, their routine, and integrating their routine is something which is super important.
I think we are coming close to personalization topic, but before we go there, so still let's go to this harder thing, which were more maybe technical, is the other aspect of the quality of content. So this is how we are exactly providing those content to HCP, to the patient. So content is structured, is highly searchable. So this is also maybe too much technical, but we know our listeners have a lot of content, a lot of information, and perhaps a couple of words about this technical housekeeping would be very necessary to add. So because this aspect is very, very important. It's like tagging keeping the right taxonomy, this type of the approach to this, exactly digital content.
Yeah, it's a good point, because how do we know what does the doctor or the HCP really want is through the data. But then how do we get that data is through that you have tagged your content properly, categorized them, and then you are able to trace it from the time of the origin of that content in the asset to where the content gets engaged with in the channel in which the content was sent, or through the channel. And we need to follow that data, and often we see that things get disconnected. It's not data are in silos, but there is a way, and a lot of companies we are working with are doing this, and we are trying to bring that data together and are able to see through the analytics solutions the relevant information about how well that content is performing, etc. But again, I would always go back to the basics of before even getting into the data question is what's your key business question? What are those questions for which you are looking for which you need answers for? Whether it is your strategic questions, or is it that you want to you want to understand how quickly you can produce content and get it to the HCPs, then that's about what is your operational related questions, or then finally it is about the engagement point, performance based, what is the content delivering the message, is it being engaged with, do the HCPs find it engaging enough? And these are three of those key parameters: strategic, operational, and performance based parameters we need to consider when we look at analytics. And then looking at, okay, do we have the data? Okay, if the data is missing, what do we need? How do we tag that piece of content? Where do we need? What type of tags do we need? And then bringing that into, then the question comes back to, okay, then if we need a list of tags, so do we have a list of a taxonomy in place?
If we have the right taxonomy.
Right taxonomy, then we say, okay, we need to harmonize the existing taxonomy so that we get the right data. Then we can get the right insights out of this. The data can be connected together from the different systems, and you get the right information and insights. And then you can see whether the HCP is engaging with the content, and therefore, if not, then you can do the A/B testing. You can test with other content. You can then provide more and more relevant content, and eventually you get to a point where personalization happens. So it's always, I think for me, it is coming back to the origin and asking the question, are we doing it right?
Fully agree. And this also will help then local users to navigate the content available and to understand the why questions, like you said, Prasant. But for me, in terms of experience, even if surely, in fact, your taxonomy, tagging, data is a must and will help, still, I guess we need to understand that this way of dealing with content and more volume is a massive change for everybody in a company, including local users, and you can be very overwhelmed with the amount of data. I don't know where to start and where to search and what to look for. So change management is something which you cannot you be underestimated, and so initially in the big programs I've seen, some of the success is to ensure that you got this close hand for local users, so that you can also guide them and help them to understand what content is available, how they can just look at relevant content to them based on their need and priorities. How can, to your point also, Prasant, they can have a look at dashboard in terms of to prove them which one will have more impact for your target, your customers, and work from there. So I guess that's initial part of change is something which again your companies need to invest in. Otherwise, your local marketers could be swamped quite easily, even if you have the right data, the right taxonomy, and the right your tagging.
Yeah, I agree, because I think part of that change management, which even I learned on the job, is about data literacy. Is okay, you can create all that dashboards and you look at the data, but what do you do with it? So I think it's important for everyone today to understand how to look at that data and see, what kind of insights you can generate out of it, and then what do you do with those insights. We talk about actionable insights quite a lot of times, but what are those actions? I think that needs some attention as well.
Exactly. And you will be surprised, but maybe not you, but actually our listeners might be surprised how many companies are not really considering the data delivered by content as the source of the information, as the source of this kind of data, because what we used to see is really about reach and frequency, about the channels, more about the channels and less about the quality and the best performing combinations of messages. And we really meeting again and again the similar cases from client to client that this tagging or this taxonomy isn't working. We cannot have the data to see what really works as a message. We cannot really understand how we measure the loyalty, how we measure the impact. So that's really the question. That's really important. Like saying this, I believe we are very close to say that content is not only the king of communication and like the main source of how we receive the information, but it is also the king of personalization, and every campaign we are going to deliver in the future, because I believe we have to talk more about this campaigning and communication and the role of content in it, not only the real like software and data, but the content as the information, as the quality information. And here, like, what do you think about storytelling? Where is the role of the storytelling then in the quality of the content and all the subject we raised today?
But just before this, in fact, because I want to react to what you said. I had a dear colleague of mine who said rightly, in fact, yes, content is king, but engagement is queen, which is the point you made in terms of how can we ensure that this content is deployed with impact to customers, etc., which I guess is so true.
Yeah, Jeff, I heard an alternative to that. If content is king, then the data is the queen.
You see?
See? Maybe content is married to too many queens.
Too many queens. Too many queens, yes.
No, it's interesting because I think when we, and Nataliya, I'll come back to the storytelling part of it. One thing I want to mention is, today we are looking at analytics from a view of, up to the point of where the HCP engaging with the content. But of course, there are pharmaceutical companies who are much mature in this area where they are looking at connecting it to even the sales data. Does that content that's being presented even, over time, the messaging, is it leading to sales, the product? And that is a bigger challenge with data, because to match and try and, because not all data is available when it comes to the sales data. I would go one step beyond that. Maybe in the future we should be able to see how it has impacted the patient. We are communicating information to the HCP. Can we even show it to the customer how that has an impact on the patient by prescribing their product? In a way we are connecting things. I don't know if that's I'm just thinking far ahead. Maybe it's not the right use case right now, but just something to think about. Anyway, coming.
I do think you have a point here, and all leads to the fact that we need to evolve in how we treat the data. This is exactly what you said before. So change management, how we use the data, how we read them, how we treat the data, and how we welcome it in our daily operations. So that shouldn't be forced. That should be welcomed, really, like. And then we will little by little evolve from all sale discipline to the impact. And impact is impacting really on our daily lives as patients. So where we go, so we have to figure out how this data will be welcomed in our everyday operations.
It's it absolutely. I mean, if you look at it, let's consider this. Even for example, when in cancer patients at the moment, there are stages of cancer. When it comes to, it's not that sometimes there is no treatment. It is about life extension. So in that case, the HCP who is treating the patient is looking to see if the patient can get good quality of life. So does the product they are prescribing, is it delivering on the promise of extending the life with good quality? So if that kind of data can be presented back to the HCP, then you build trust over time with and much more brand salience, I would say, and it will impact on the patient, impact on the HCP, impact on the sales eventually. So everything. And I think that's where I'm coming to the point Nataliya raised about the storytelling. I think that's important. The whole journey, mapping, understanding the patient's journey, because we talk about patient centricity as well as, for us, customer centricity with the HCP in the middle. But eventually it's about the patient. But understanding the patient's journey, keeping in view the HCP's journey, because HCP, one fantastic thing about our industry is that HCPs are aware of new products way before it can be prescribed, because clinical trials and the data on clinical trials are launched way before marketing authorization is available. So you can see the journey for content even starts way back, even before a patient has been identified who can be treated with that drug. So the beauty of the thing is we need to understand what is that story, where does that content start from, that journey, and what kind of content, how does it impact each stages of the HCP's journey, from knowing the product to actually treating the patient. And if at each point we can create content that will help them, it brings in the positive impact. I mean, like Jeff said, in theory, we can talk about it, but in practice, it's a lot more difficult.
Yeah, for sure, but storytelling is so important, because even if you go back to what we discussed around content strategy, normally before you're crafting of having an idea of content, you're being an asset with its format and text, you need to know what you want to say. So we are talking here about your messaging, and then the way to orchestrate your messaging so that you can take your customers from A to Z is very much about storytelling. And this is something which is not widely done in pharma. Very often, you got a list of your 3-4 your key messages, but we still not so much your guidance in terms of how you should you organize them in a kind of sequence, but also how the sequence might vary depending on the persona that you are talking about. And what I found, in fact, for the companies who are doing this well, storytelling is the most effective way to communicate to customer-facing teams, reps and MSL, the intent around driving behavior change for the customers. And if you do this successfully, and then that a rep or customer-facing person, you understand the story, then automatically you empower this person, say, yes, I know, and then I'll have the opportunity and the autonomy, yes, to select myself, the content and the channels I want to use to affect and implement this storytelling. So that's a brilliant way to communicate to your field force, which is again not widely used, but when it's being done, you got the sense truly empowerment of your customer-facing team, what you also need to understand in storytelling is that even if you're on paper, it will look somewhere linear, so that you've got a story and you go from A to Z. Again, in practice, it's most likely to be something like an iteration, because again, triggered by data, there's no way you need to continue with your story unless you have evidence that your customers got your point about your story. And if they didn't, in fact, you will need to circle back until they do. And how you know? Again, it's back to what we said before, it's the role of data and insight just to know this. So storytelling is very much an anchor and a first piece, a cornerstone to customer engagement.
Yeah, that's beautiful because whenever we are hurrying up to produce more and more content, and whenever we are accelerating of content production, so like we are forgetting about the importance of storytelling, because it is the other process. It is about being consistent, about being logical, about giving the agenda and being able to receive a feedback and being able to implement this feedback. It's not about overproduce of the short-lived content, right? So it is the other process, and this is very important, so to make the stress on this aspect of our conversation. So I want to thank you both for this time today, and thank you all of our listeners to being with us the very first time. I want to put a small teaser for the next topics, which all will be about impact of AI on the content and the quality of the content, and how much we are using AI in the content production. So thank you for being with us today again, and you guys.
Thank you. I'm Prasant Vijayakumar.
And I am Jean-Francois Delas, and wishing you a great day.
And I am Nataliya Andreychuk, and will be with you the next time. Thank you and goodbye.